How's it going, everyone? Nice to see you again. Today we're going to be talking about smelling salts. More specifically, the history, the science, the application, and my current recommendations on the use of them. So, next time you're at a powerlifting meet and somebody asks you to jump on the bandwagon and take a sniff, you have a better amount of information to make that decision on. So, I've compiled some information here based off of a few articles that I've been looking over and a few papers that I've found. So let's jump into it. So how long have smelling salts been used and what are they generally used for? There is evidence as far back as around 50 AD that describes their use, and there was a reference to them in writings from Pliny the Elder, who was a Roman soldier, lawyer, and writer, as ammoniacus sal, right, or ammonia salt. From there, elementary descriptions of their use by alchemists back in the 14th century as sal ammoniac have been found. And in the 14th century, one of Chaucer's plays, the Canterbury Tales, which I think we've all heard of, all pretty familiar with, includes a reference to Sal Armagnac. If you're a big fantasy reader or a big fantasy game player, you may have heard of hartshorn as an item that you can find in the game. Hartshorn is a distillation of ammonia that's been taken from the scrapings of deer horn or hart horn and their hooves, and then diluted in a mixture usually of like perfume or vinegar or ethanol or alcohol, which led to the name hartshorn. In Victorian Britain, their use exploded under the name sal volatile and was used to revive fainting women and inebriated citizens on the streets, carried around in little glass containers, usually mixed with perfumes or vinegars to change the scent without losing the harshness of its purpose. They called these little containers, usually it contained the ammonia distilled with vinegar and then soaked in a sponge, kept in these small vials, and they were called vinaigrettes. So now we have little vinaigrettes that we use for eating, but that was different back then. Sal volatile appears several times in Charles Dickens' novels, and during the Second World War, it was advised to always have some in your first aid box for like the British Red Cross and others. So that's a quick history on smelling salts, and it was typically used to revive fainted people or to help people stop themselves from fainting. And then even later on in like boxing matches, it would be used to help keep someone conscious while they were fighting through the match. Not really recommended by me for something like that because it can lead to further injury, but we'll talk about that for like 2 seconds later. Let's go on to the science of ammonia inhalants or smelling salts. So, now that we know a general history of the substance, what is it and what physical effect does it actually have in the body? The most commonly used smelling salts today are made from ammonium carbonate salts that form a brittle chalk-like substance that release ammonia gas when they're irritated or when they're broken. So if you have the little bottle ones, usually you shake it and then you smell it. And then if you have the little popper packs, you can pop it and the ammonia gas comes out and that's what you inhale. Usually those little poppers are not ammonia carbonate, they're alkyl or amyl nitrates instead, but it has the same nauseous effect. The gas is inhaled through the nostrils, aggravates the mucus lining of the inner nose, which triggers a reflexive inhalation, and then a short bout of tachypnea, which is increased breathing rate. It's thought that this increases your heart rate and oxygen consumption, leading to an increase in perfusion of oxygen throughout the body, including the brain, which is why it was used to help revive someone from fainting back in the day. It was thought that the main reason, or back then even the only reason for fainting, was your brain wasn't getting enough blood. Breathe this in, it wakes you right back up. Let's see here. So we're going to talk about, can you target this effect for sport applications and use it as an ergogenic aid? There's also been literature suggesting that this has a sympathetic irritation effect that's opposite that of the parasympathetic vagal response or effect. This can lead to a feeling of physical and psychological arousal. And it's important to note that it's not advised to use these inhalants to improve post-concussive cognition or performance due to increased injury and inaccuracy of concussive testing. If you suffer a concussion and then before your athletic trainer or before someone comes out there to check on the severity of the concussion, someone runs up and gives you smelling salts, it's going to mess up the results of that test, right? And it's also not advised to use post-cervical or head injury because for most people, when they smell this, they have a neck jerk reflex, and this could possibly increase the damage that was done to the neck or to the head. The previously described mechanism has been shown to work for reviving fainted persons, depending on the reason that they fainted, with good consistency. But is there anything behind the claim that it can improve sports performance? Let's pull up a couple studies for that. So finally, on to our discussion of the use of ammonia inhalants or smelling salts as an ergogenic aid. What has science said about this in the recent past, and how well researched is it really? Not very well researched, I'll tell you right now. It's hard to find a lot of papers on the actual effects it has physically on sports performance. And even when you do find these papers, there aren't very many, the population is very low. There aren't very many people in the studies. A few papers and articles will be in the description, and feel free to peruse them yourselves, but I will summarize the information here. In reality, the science behind using smelling salts as an ergogenic aid in sports is very under-researched. A 2015 study including 12 people that roughly averaged about 21 years of age, about 5.9 feet tall or 180 centimeters, and around 81 kilograms in weight, tried to look at the effect of ammonia inhalants on their vertical jump performance, their broad leap performance, and then their 1 rep max bench and squat performance. The 12 people were all tested on baseline function, and then they were broken up into 3 groups: a control group, a Vicks VapoRub group, and then an actual ammonia inhalant group. 48 hours later, they were tested again with the inhalants, and the study found that there was no difference between the with and without inhalant performance in any of the groups. So their performance before and after was the same whether they smelled the control, which was nothing, they smelled the VapoRub, or they smelled the ammonia. In a 2019 study looking at the reaction time and the anaerobic performance of hockey players with and without smelling salts, concluded that even though there was a significant short-term increase in heart rate and in breathing rate for even up to 6 minutes after inhalation, there was no effect on their reaction time, and there was no effect on their anaerobic performance. This study was pretty interesting to read through, so I have it linked in the description. So based on that, what would my recommendations be? So now that we know all this, what do we do with it? My current recommendation on this would be there is not enough scientific evidence to show that it actually works at boosting your physical performance or your athletic performance as an ergogenic aid, but there could be a relatively significant placebo effect if you don't know the science behind the ammonia inhalants and all you've heard is the hype behind using it to improve your lifts or increase your physical endurance. And there could be a slight psychological arousal that can help in certain situations. If you're going to use it for this reason, I would recommend only using it during competition and not using it during training. This reduces the frequency, which reduces the possibility of negative side effects due to frequent use and due to overuse. I have used these before for powerlifting meets, and this is the way that I kind of saw it. So lifting a 1 rep max is painful to do. On the day of competition, you're tired, mentally fatigued from preparing for the competition, and physically a little fatigued from making the weight, controlling your diet, and executing up until the day of. And if you're partway through the competition already, you also have the built-up fatigue of doing your previous 1 rep maxes or performing the first half of the soccer game, whatever you're talking about. So this anticipated pain but relaxed state between performances can be counterintuitive psychologically, and I think the pain of smelling salts kind of primes you for the pain of lifting heavy and transitions you better from a relaxed mental state to attempting to lift the heaviest weight you've ever lifted. So if you've ever done a powerlifting competition, you'll know that it is very energetic but very relaxed simultaneously. You have long bouts of just laying there, watching other people lift, waiting, maybe eating some snacks, trying to kind of calm yourself down in time for the next lift where you go up there and then suddenly you go from 0 to I'm going to deadlift 750 pounds. Never done that before, right? And I found that using smelling salts kind of helped me transition from that I'm going to relax, conserve energy, into that I'm about to pick something up I've never picked up before, and it kind of transitions because the smelling salts, if you've ever done it, you'll know it's like a really sharp, like brain squeeze feeling, and it kind of feels like it spikes your adrenaline, and then you jump out there, and you're no longer in a relaxed state to lift, and some people find that helpful. Now, when I'm training, I like to be like super zen, and I like to go up there, hit my lifts, get off, and then do some breathing exercises, try to get my heart rate down, relax, and then the next one I'll go up there, do another set of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But when I'm doing 1 rep maxes, it helps me to be more heavy metal mindset. But that's just my experience. It's completely psychological for me, but I still recommend to only use them during competition if you're going to use them at all. Which, once again, there have not been any papers that I have read that have shown them to actually improve performance. So, at the end of the day, there's no reason to waste the money and to risk the possible negative side effects. Hopefully, you've enjoyed this segment on smelling salts. If you've learned something, then comment below what you've learned. You can ask any questions you may have in the comment section as well, and I'll get back to you as quickly as I can. And thank you for watching. Don't forget to like the video if you found this interesting. And don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this in this format. I'm going to try to improve something every video. So if you want to see more, then be sure to subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.